First question is going to be coming from Kristen. First question, they're going to have 3 minutes to answer. Judge, starting with you.
I think this is the first time we have a judge up here. That's exciting. All right. Judge Dave Larson. This is on motivations and visions for the state's highest court. Judge Larson, with your extensive experience as a trial judge and your background as a highly rated trial lawyer, what motivated you to seek a position on the state's highest court? How do your personal values and professional experiences shape your vision for addressing the current challenges within our criminal justice system? Specifically, what initiatives would you prioritize to improve coordination and strategy within the criminal justice system across the state?
Thank you. That's a great question. But 3 minutes, you said? Oh, more like 3 hours. But really, let me answer it this way from the standpoint of what it means to be a judge. First of all, you have to love the fact that your objective. Your only oath is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. There's no room for politics. It's just pure the law and the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 1 of our state constitution says all political power is inherent in the people. Governments derive their just, and I emphasize just, powers from the consent of the governed, and the purpose of government is to protect and maintain individual rights. We've gotten a little bit away from that in recent years. And the idea is to bring us back to that very, very basic provision. There's a provision in our Constitution, Article 1, Section 32, that says a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to individual right and the perpetuity of free government. And the reason that's in there is because we have to constantly bathe ourselves in the principles that make us free. And if we don't do that, what's happened for thousands of years is a conflict between people that want to be free and people who want to dominate and control. And right now, the people that want to be free just want to live in love. People want to dominate, control, keep encroaching until you have to push back. Right now, we're at the edge of a cliff, and it's either fall off the cliff or push back. When it comes to criminal justice, I've been actually recognized nationally in terms of my strategies, and I don't want to have everybody glaze over with the technicalities, but right now we have a very fragmented system that keeps passing people back and forth, and there's ways to do this, and our Supreme Court's been silent. Rome's burning, and they've been fiddling, right? They fiddle with a lot of other stuff, and a lot of other things, but this has been the lowest priority. So in the trial courts, we're flailing around, and the strategies I've developed have started being accepted in the legislature on both sides of the aisle, and we're starting to make progress. And to get me on the Supreme Court, we'd be able to help the trial courts actually deal with the issues that are facing our community in an organized way instead of the fragmented and chaotic way we're doing it now. Thank you.
Okay, this question is for Pete. First question. Pete, my question for you is on the topic of priorities and initiatives as Attorney General. So Pete, with your track record of accomplishments in Pasco, such as your role in the National Opioid Settlement Agreement and bringing the Basic Law Enforcement Academy Training Center to the city, what specific initiatives would you prioritize as Washington State Attorney General to enhance community safety and address the state's drug crisis? How do you plan to implement these initiatives to ensure they align with the principles of justice, effective governance, and the state constitution?
Well, thank you for that. I got to give credit to the City of Pasco staff, especially our chief of police, who lobbied hard to get the Basic Law Enforcement Academy down in Pasco. I mean, he worked his butt off. He worked with the state. He lobbied legislatures. And we've actually had what I've understood is 10 people that have come through that academy who have stayed in the Tri-Cities who would have not otherwise been police officers. So whether it's across the river where Senny lives or whether it's in Pasco where I live, our communities are benefiting. And it wasn't just Chief Frosty. You know, it was a collective process from the city council, from other cities that are working with us. So I don't take credit for that. My staff did a heck of a job, our chief did a heck of a job. What I will tell you is this. Our legislature's failing us. they're seeking to decriminalize drugs, whether it's possession or consumption or both. Monka Dingra was the architect of that. She's one of my two opponents. Nick Brown, his comment when he was appointed United States Attorney by Joe Biden, in speaking to NPR, his comment was, I'd rather seek minimum sentencing standards so that these people, when they get out, have a fair shot. I'm here to tell you that the rule of law is to be obeyed. I will work with the legislature and say, we're going to make sure we recriminalize these. Let's get folks in jail who are pushing drugs illicitly. Let's make sure those folks that are doing it subversively, manufacturers, those who are involved in opioids or other so-called drugs, that they're held accountable under the Consumer Protection Act. Just this week, the Kansas Attorney General filed a 180-page complaint that includes multiple documents to sue Pfizer when they claimed that their shot was safe and effective. And when I go to meet with the Republican Attorney Generals Association, I'm hoping he's there. And I'm hoping I can say, buddy, cut and paste, pal. Let's make sure that when corporations do illicit things and harm the people of Washington, that we're penalizing them too. And again, going back to the war on drugs, let's prosecute to the fullest. Thank you.
Joe, this question's for you as you're running for our 3rd Congressional District. This question's about the priorities and initiatives as a congressman. Your campaign focuses on restoring common sense Republican values and addressing the issues you see as critical to the district. What specific initiatives would you prioritize to improve the economic conditions and public safety in Washington's 3rd Congressional District? And how do you plan to address the increasing concerns over illegal immigration and its impact on the community while ensuring these initiatives align with both local needs and national constitutional principles?
It's a great question. So, look, number one, we've got to shut down the border. The border is wide open. And what people need to realize about this border crisis is that this isn't a mistake. This is not because Joe Biden's just incompetent and kind of goofy and left the border open and Perez is kind of mammering on. This is a deliberate strategy by the Democrats to flood the country with as many people as they possibly can because they want to jack up the census numbers so that they can legislate their way into new U.S. House of Representatives seats and new electoral college votes. This is a pure power play by the Democrats. All the murders that we just talked about, all the fentanyl deaths, that is collateral damage to the Democrats. That is how sick these people are. Congress has one main lever they can pull on, and that is the purse strings. Congress controls the budget. The U.S. Congress should not be doing anything right now until the border is secure. The president has all the power that he needs right now to shut down and to secure the border, and I would not give him one penny until he does that. It's the only leverage that Congress has. Also, there's H.R. 2, which is probably the most aggressive border control measures and immigration policy that we've ever put forward. Marie Perez and every Democrat voted against that. Perez then went on to say, well, no one stays awake at night about the southern border. So, number one priority, they're basically mocking us to our faces. And then they're going to try and say, oh no, it's the Republicans that turned down a deal that would codify an invasion of our country. So that is all psychological warfare that they're waging on us. Luckily, the people are seeing through that, and right now the border is a top issue because of the fentanyl deaths and just because of the carnage. That's the first priority. The second priority is to stop spending us into oblivion. Washington, D.C. printing billions and trillions of dollars, $2.5 trillion over the budget every single year that Biden's been in power. That is what's driving the cycle of inflation. The war on U.S. energy, that's driving the cycle of inflation. So it's very simple. Congress has to do some very hard things, and that's going to be cuts across the board, balance the budget, pass individual appropriations bills, stop this nonsense with omnibuses where they jam all the appropriations bills together and it runs up the debt, no one reads the bill, and they pass it in the dead of night. That's got to end. We've got to get back to prioritizing American citizens, being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. We don't need to raise people's taxes. We're overtaxed enough as it is, but we need to stop the money printing and demand that our government stop worrying about every other country in the world and putting our country last. Secure our own borders. Thank you.
All right, this question is for Semi Bird, as you guys know, gubernatorial candidate. On judicial accountability, yes, go for it.
Give Olympia the bird.
All right. On judicial accountability and statewide safety initiatives, Semi, as a candidate for the most powerful position in our state, you have emphasized the critical need for holding judges, it's kind of awkward, right? Holding judges and prosecutors accountable to ensure community safety. Can you elaborate on the specific mechanisms you would implement to enhance accountability and oversight in the judicial and prosecutorial offices, such as the Judicial Watch Performance Report?
Yeah, no, thank you. So we actually put out our law and order platform a year ago. So while the other candidates are fighting around their new platforms now, we've been out there with solutions for a while. And so our Judicial Watch is simply this. These are elected positions, and our citizens need to know who they're voting for. When you have this revolving door that is catch and release, or you're not even prosecuting or bringing accountability to these habitual criminals who are compromising our public safety, well, then you need to be held accountable. And so if you're going back up for office and you're continuing to perform your duties that are causing a compromise to our public safety, well, then we're going to rate you. And we're going to say if you're causing a compromise to public safety, then your rating is going to go down. So when you come back for election, people are going to remember that. And they're going to say, well, we are not going to put you back in the office because we remember how you released this criminal who murdered this person, or you caught and released, or you minimized their bail. For example, we lost one of our state troopers, an illegal immigrant, right? Trooper Gad. Within 1 year of him graduating, he was murdered by an illegal immigrant, again, drunk driving, and that person shouldn't have even been here. And then the judge reduced his bail. This is an offense to not only our judicial system, to his family. And his family happen to be close friends of mine. But it doesn't matter. It's all of our citizens who are at risk. So no, that's just one example. We don't have enough public defenders. And so why are we not talking about the fact that you cannot prosecute a case if you do not have the public defenders to also defend those criminals? And so now cases are being dismissed. RCW 43.06.10 says the government can actually appoint the Attorney General's office to provide support for county prosecutors. So instead of them catching and releasing because they don't have enough help, well then let the state government help them start prosecuting criminals. And so instead of putting more career politicians in office, why not put a governor who's a career American who will actually have a backbone to support public safety and actually do something about it because he actually knows the law and the Constitution, which according to Article 1, Section 2 of our Constitution says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I will use it as my foundation of governance.
The next question is for Judge Larson. Okay, so this is on the topic of judicial independence and legal interpretation. Judge Larson, you have emphasized the importance of respecting and following our state constitution and the proper role of the courts in upholding and interpreting the law. Can you elaborate on how you would ensure judicial independence while serving on the state's highest court? How do you plan to navigate cases that involve contentious legal and constitutional issues, ensuring that your decisions are both legally sound and reflective of the principles enshrined in our Constitution? Additionally, how will you work to maintain public confidence in the judiciary and its role in a balanced and just legal system that adheres to the state constitution?
Again, 3 minutes? Okay. So you have to be grounded in principles. If you're not grounded in principles, in other words, right now the problem we have is our compass is broken. And so if you don't, remember that Article 1, Section 32, frequent recurrence to fundamental principles, the essential to individual right, well, it's also essential to all three branches of government. So the people, I've actually written a thing that I presented now called How Freedom Works. You can imagine the Constitution as being the foundation of our country. What I talk about is the hard pan that the foundation sits on. And if it's a belief system, if you don't believe it, then it's just words on paper. An example I used at the Clark County Republican Women was I read from a constitution of another country, and they had free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, etc. It was communist China. So if you don't believe in those underlying principles, if the foundation's sitting on a loose bedrock, then you end up failing that. And then confidence in the system is depleted because you're now you're making decisions based upon power instead of responsibility. You're making decisions on where the result dictates the law rather than the law dictates the result. And then you lose confidence, and then it becomes political, and exactly where we are now, where people don't have confidence. And really, we don't have a military, we don't have a police, we don't have anything to enforce. The only thing we have in the courts to enforce is the confidence in the people and the outcome of the decision. And if you're grounded in principles and grounded in the Constitution and grounded in those things, public confidence will come from that. Now, judicial independence, there's a thing called the Council on Independent Courts that was formed about 3 years ago. That was formed based on the work I have done going throughout the state and protecting judicial independence throughout the state. One thing I want to make sure everybody knows before we go is that this is an open seat. It's the first time in 12 years there's been an open seat. The standard is for the incumbent to resign, and under our state constitution, the governor appoints the replacement, right? They become the incumbent. There's no confirmation process. There's no check and balance. It's the one person has selected 169 of the 205 judges that are currently sitting on Superior Court, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court. That's a threat to judicial independence. When one person, it was one of the grievances in the Declaration of Independence that the king got to appoint the judges, and the judges only answered to the king. Not that Governor Inslee's a king, but the point is that, and I can't be political, but nobody's a king. This would be wrong if it was Governor Larson. It would be wrong. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest threat to judicial independence, is the power condensed in one person to select who the judges are. And this is an opportunity for the people themselves to decide the outcome. My main opponent is endorsed by 8 of the 9 justices, and he's blowing the horn on that. And I told the Seattle Times that's exactly why they need to endorse me, because they need a different voice than they need. It's because I'm not endorsed by them that makes me special. And judicial independence comes from the idea that you always have to have a contrary voice saying, wait a minute. And there is no wait a minute. Right? Well, there's a couple wait a minutes here and there on the court right now. But ultimately, that's what I'll be, is the wait a minute guy. Okay?
How are these men doing? It sounds like they have a little bit about servant leadership on their heart. You think they're doing a good job? The root of a lot of the problems that we see in our Washington state and our United States is very deeply rooted in the establishment, as we're familiar with. These are men and women that are interested in personal power for themselves instead of serving, which is what they sign up to do as public servants. Pete, this question's for you. It's on combating human trafficking and upholding constitutional rights. Your platform emphasizes the importance of protecting families and safeguarding children from human trafficking. Can you elaborate on the comprehensive strategies you plan to develop in collaboration with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to combat human trafficking effectively? Additionally, how will you balance these efforts with your advocacy for constitutional rights particularly in the context of responsible firearm ownership and ensuring public safety amidst rising crime rates and evolving legislation changes in Washington State. So if a legal comes to my house and wants to cause some problems, I think we need to answer that.
Yeah. Let me start with where I am today, or actually where I'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be in King County Superior Court arguing on your behalf to make sure that Initiative 2081, the Parents' Bill of Rights, is well defended. So, for everyone that remembers, in that six-pack of initiatives, one of those was the Parents' Bill of Rights, which makes sure that you as a parent or grandparent or guardian have access to materials in the schools and have access to the information that's being taught to your children and told to your children in their health records. Now, Let's Go Washington, Jim Walsh, One Washington, and Informed Choice of Washington were all integral in the passing of that, and we're seeking to have them as status in that case. And I'm excited that we have the ability to do that. Because here's the deal. Whether it's Mike being worried about the police coming to his house to bust down the door because someone makes false allegations about him, his wife, or his children, or their relationship, it all starts in the schools. If we can't protect our kid when they're out of our control and in the government's hands for that brief temporary moment of 6 to 8 hours, we're never going to have control of our children, and the state will always seek more and more and more. And I can tell you this because I spent the past couple hours reading the pleadings of these organizations. All they want is more. Your kids are not your kids. These private organizations, the state see them as collateral. We absolutely have to stand for it. So, what am I going to do? Tomorrow I'll defend you. When I'm elected Attorney General in January 2025, or technically November, but sworn in January, I will make sure that I work comprehensively with local PD, local prosecutors, as well as the WSP, the Washington State Patrol. We will make sure that individuals who are actually trafficking kids, drugs, or whatever it may be, that they are prosecuted. Again, back to the same common theme, prosecution of the bad guys. 2, make sure they have the resources. Does somebody need a grant? As Mr. Burgess said, there's an opportunity for the governor to tell me what to do. There's also an opportunity for me to tell local prosecutors what to do. You're not doing your job. You're not checking out these kids that are getting trafficked. And so I look at the city of Pasco, and while we're one of the safest cities in the state of Washington, we do have concerns with trafficking. It has to do with the geographic location where we are. We're in that 182 corridor. We're also in a very high intensive ag area. So we have lots of folks that come in, these kids come with them, or they leave with them, or whatever the case may be. And so we've worked with our officers to make sure they're A, trained, and B, they have linguistic expertise, not just in English and Spanish, but we have some of the Slavic groups, making sure that they have linguistic expertise to make sure they can communicate effectively with these individuals. So that's the starting point, but tomorrow is step number 1.
All right, Joe. This question is on legislative strategies and community engagement. Joe, given your experience as a foreign policy advisor and your stance on reducing federal spending, what legislative strategies would you implement to balance fiscal responsibility with the need for essential community services? How do you intend to foster direct engagement with your constituents, ensuring transparency and responsiveness, particularly in the context of continuous issues like border security, election integrity, and federal funding for local projects?
Awesome. So the way you engage and stay connected is by doing events like this. I mean, my campaign last time and this time we did, I think we're close to 400 in-person town halls. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So if you come to one of my town halls, you can ask me any question, and I'm going to continue to do that while I'm in Congress because I'm accountable to you guys, not to the people in Washington, D.C., first and foremost. The issue we have right now, it's a huge crisis with the budget. I mean, we are $35 trillion in debt. If you look big picture, what's happening with de-dollarization, with the BRICS nations, with Russia, with China, We have a tidal wave that's approaching and really no one's sounding the alarm. Our financial rug could be pulled out from underneath us when a lot of these countries stop backing their currency with the dollar. We've got to get our financial house in order, and that starts with prioritizing, and we have to prioritize American citizens. We take in close to $5 trillion in tax revenue, securing our border, doing local infrastructure projects like the third bridge, like making sure our interstate commerce, our federal highways are actually functional and serving the people. That's just basic government stuff 101. We can most certainly do that. We've got to stop the bleeding of how much money that we're printing. But also, look, our first place that we can start is how much money we're sending overseas. I spent most of my adult life fighting in our wars overseas. I can talk about those all night and how wasteful they were. We are continuing to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on foreign aid and on foreign wars for one very simple reason. It makes people rich in Washington, D.C. That's it, period, end of story. I'm not saying we need to abandon the world. We still have some commitments. We can fulfill them, but we need to make sure our allies are doing their part. But we got to make sure that we're safe and secure here at home first. So it starts with being good stewards of your dollar, making sure our country is secure, and making sure that if we are ever going to go to war, we follow the Constitution. We make sure there's a vote on it in Congress, and we make sure that the people are on board, and we can define what the vital national security interest is. The way that we are right now being marched towards World War III on multiple fronts, whether it's the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Biden, without asking Congress, just authorized U.S. weapons to be fired into Russia. He is trying to get us into World War III. You guys know what the recruiting numbers are looking like right now? They're not good. They have automatic draft registration for males going into effect, and they're talking about registering females for the draft. That's around the corner if we don't get our act together. Get Washington, D.C. off of this perpetual cycle of money printing and endless wars, secure our borders, put our people first. It's going to be a fight. They're going to call us every name in the book. They're going to call us, Putin's stooges. They're going to say that we're just obstructionists because we don't want to pass the lobbyist omnibus bill. But we've got to do it. Put our citizens first.
A lot of great answers tonight. Thank you. Okay, so my next question here is for Semi Bird on the comprehensive support for law enforcement and crime reduction. Okay? So Semi, in your run for governor, you have outlined an ambitious plan to support law enforcement, including reinstatement of key laws, recruitment initiatives, and enhanced state logistical support. What specific steps will you take to implement these strategies, such as the Universal Reciprocity Program and high school recruitment pipelines, to ensure a robust law enforcement presence? Furthermore, how do you intend to integrate these efforts with your broader crime reduction strategies, including targeting drug traffickers, human traffickers, and criminal organizations to foster a safer environment for all Washingtonians?
That just sounds like fun. Thank you. No, absolutely. Where to start? The pipeline. From schools, we have schools resource officers. So those are our first mentors from middle school. So children in all communities see that law enforcement are our friends. They're something people to look up to want to follow in those footsteps. And that's where the recruiting starts. And then the Explore programs that have been abandoned from years ago, where young people at an early age are already thinking about being in the police departments or being in the sheriff's departments or wanting to pursue a career. And so that's where the pipeline starts. The reason why this is important is because Washington State is last on having enough law enforcement officers. We have the lowest number of law enforcement officers of any state in the nation. And that is a shame. And then we have a recruiting problem because no one wants to be a law enforcement officer because of the way this environment is. This governor, this administration treats law enforcement professionals like they're third-class citizens. We had these mandates and these vaccinations, and we were letting law enforcement officers go. Either you get the stab or the jab or you're out of a job, and that's nonsense. So one of the things I'm going to do is give back our state police officers, our state patrol, their jobs back. If you lost your job because you refused, you get your job back with full seniority. And then we're going to start with a resolution to pledge our support and our love for those men and women in law enforcement so they know categorically we have your back. You're not going to worry about losing your life or your livelihood or your family because of that. So there's that pipeline, recruiting, retention, reciprocity, simply saying, if you want to come to Washington State and have that licensure as a peace officer in Texas or any other state, we're going to streamline that process. And we already have it started right now. We did it with nursing. We need to do it with mental health professionals. We need to do it with drug treatment professionals. And so there's that. Human trafficking, as Pete says, you have Homeland Security Investigation Bureau is the primary agency that works with human trafficking. Well, I've worked in targeting narco-terrorists, human trafficking. It's all crime syndicates, cartels. We have, am I speaking fast? We have 3 cartels operating in Washington State. We have the Sinaloa cartel operating in northeastern Washington. We have the Jalisco New Generation cartel operating right here in southwestern Washington. We have the Beltran-Leyva cartel operating in northwestern Washington. And so we need to understand how we target them. And I know how to do that because I've worked with Joint Interagency Task Force. I've already said in my program, we're going to form a Joint Interagency Task Force, a fusion center of intelligence to target these individuals. I know how to do it from the technology, Analyst Wolf, Parrot, Paladin, Notebook. I've targeted these people, going after their money, going after who they know. We are bringing the heat. We're going to make dealing in narcotics, fentanyl, the #1 killer, 18 to 45, a Class A felony. And then we're taking them down as we go on. So, solutions and actions. Thank you. Thank you.
Sonny, just to confirm, so you think it'd be better for our society if men and women in law enforcement had more influence on our children in the public schools than drag queens?
100%.
Oh, okay. That seems logical.
Thank you.
Okay, this question's for you, Dave. And you answered a little bit of this earlier, so you can expand however you'd like. So, how many current justices are in our Washington State Supreme Court? How many were appointed by Jay Inslee? How often does a Supreme Court position in Washington State come up?
I couldn't tell you how many. I think it's at least 3. Helen Whitener, Raquel Montoya Lewis, Steve Gonzalez, Mary Yu, that's 4. I think that's 4 of the 9, or I believe there might be 5. So, what was the next part of the question? There are 9.
Yeah, how many were appointed by Inslee?
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
How often?
At least 4, if not 9. So elections for Supreme Court justices, imagine that there's 6-year terms, and every 2 years there's 3 of them up. Okay, so this year it's Chief Justice Gonzalez and Justice Gordon McLeod, and then the open seat because Susan Owens decided to retire, right? And in 3 years there'll be, or 2 years there'll be 3 more up, and 2 years there'll be 3 more up after that. So that's how often they're up for election, and there you go.
Is it fair to say that it's a rare opportunity for we the people to actually have the opportunity to have influence on this
Under the way it's
position?
been the last few years, extremely rare for there to be an open seat. And that's why I ran. I was going to retire next year. There's too many things happening and too many reasons why, like I got 4 grandchildren now, just had my 4th. Too many reasons to kind of say, wait a minute, I can't walk away from this now. Is it okay if I share how I see elected office, and I hope I influence other people that are running for office too in this way. I was with a group of elected officials, and there were some high school students that were there. I'm very involved in civics education, and there's high school students, and one of the students asked, when did you feel closest to your position? Well, each of the politicians went down the line, and one was the mayor. They talked about some initiative they had for the city. Legislator talked about a law they passed, talked about a program they created. And it got to me, and I said, I was in the back of the line at a chili cook-off. And this person that I knew came out and said, hey, Judge, how you doing? And they walked away after we talked a couple minutes. The person behind me said, hey, you're a judge. Just cut up in the front of the line. And I said, actually, when I don't have my robe on, I'm like anybody else. And I told the students, the reason I told you that story is my #1 position is that of citizen. I play a role as a judge. I have a responsibility. I'm a servant, not a master. And the problem we have now is too many people seek power and not enough people seek responsibility. And there's a huge difference in the outcome. Huge difference in the outcome. It's about power, it's about what you do for me, and about what you owe me. And when it's about responsibility, it's my duty to you and what I owe you. And that's what our whole form of governance, Article 1, Section 1, is based on the assumption that we have people that are in love with responsibility and want to hold power at arm's length. Because power has always been destructive. And so that, above all else, is what, because right now all the things we're talking, and you notice I wasn't clapping or all the political stuff, because I'm so pure to try and say they're political, right? But inside you want to clap as a person, but as a judge. But the point is we're treating symptoms. We're not treating the underlying disease. And what I'm talking about is treating the underlying disease. The whole ethic of the way we approach governance. We're so far up, we're so interested in getting our way that we've lost our way.
Yeah.
I'm entitled to my opinion, and you're entitled to my opinion too. Right? And if you don't agree with me, you're whatever. There's so many, I work closely with the legislature, there's so many times that laws don't pass because the wrong person had the idea. And that's just abhorrent. Everything that anybody should ever stand for. So we got to start understanding that there's a lot deeper issues than just whether there's a third bridge and all these other things, right? Those issues are influenced by power and responsibility. I'll close, and I know I'm going over 3 minutes, so I'll close with this. I was on the Brandy Cruz show, and she asked me about why the legislature wasn't getting those initiatives through, right? And I instead of getting into a legal issue and everything else, I took it from a standpoint of the power and responsibility kind of conflict, right? And I said, if it's about power and it's your enemy, the other side that wants to get something through, you're going to do everything you can to keep it from going through, right? When it's about responsibility, if the Constitution says you're supposed to do something, you do it. And that's really the best example I can come up with, the difference between power and responsibility. Our founders hated power. That's why we have 3 branches of government and everything else. But I'll shut up at that. But the point is that unless we start treating the disease, the fact that we've lost, every year I start my street law class at Todd Beamer High School, I ask, what's the most important to protect our freedom? And they go around the room, military, police, constitution, etc. You know what the answer is? The belief that it's important. Because as soon as you stop believing it's important, then it starts to whittle away. And we are where we are right now because we stopped believing it was important.
All right, Pete. Over the past 3 years, you have engaged in significant legal communication with the offices of Governor Jay Inslee and Attorney General Bob Ferguson regarding our constitutional rights. If you had a 3-minute opportunity to address them directly, what would you convey?
Do I really need 3 minutes for that answer? I think I could say, yeah. I look forward to seeing the vacant offices. No, realistically, Silent Majority Foundation was formed to stand for you. Quite frankly, it was formed to stand for my kids. So in self-interest of preserving my kids' future, you benefit. Whether or not Jay Inslee, whether or not Joe Biden, because we sued the Biden administration, whether or not Bob Ferguson or Chris Reichdahl, whether or not Alliance for Gun Responsibility are happy with what we've done, I don't care. We have a shirt that says facts over feelings. Maybe it should say law over feelings. The reality is anyone, as the judge just gave us a perfect dissertation on, that seeks power and authority rather than responsibility and integrity doesn't deserve to sit in that seat, whether it's Bob's, Jay's, or your local city council person. What we need is individuals of integrity, and those two are not. That's what I would tell them. Say, don't let the door hit you on the ass when you get out.
my next question here is for Joe Kent here. 2 minutes. This is on the topic of the southern border. So Joe, you have been to the southern border, and what did you see? How is it impacting our 3rd Congressional District? And what should be done about illegal immigration? And what has your opponent, Marie Perez, done on illegal immigration?
I'll start.
Or not done?
Yeah, I'll start with the last part there. Marie Perez is executing Joe Biden's open border plan. This is not incompetence. She voted against H.R. 2. Everything else since then has been pure performance. The bill that she proposed that she's going to talk about, it allocated $0 for the border. When D.C. cares about something, they fund it. There was no money in there. There was just words. And it left the asylum loophole open. So I've been down to the border twice. And I'll tell you the big takeaways is that we are being invaded. When you hear 12 million, that's an estimate. I've probably seen thousands of people cross the border in a couple days I've spent down there. I think we have no idea. But the majority of people that are coming here, they're coming because Biden said, number one, the border's open. Number two, he provided a pathway to citizenship for these people. And we continue to give people amnesty. It's just happened the other day. 500,000 amnesty visas are being given, and these people now have a pathway to citizenship. So we are incentivizing people to come over here illegally. When Biden took office, he got rid of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, but that really just created the demand for people to run out, cross the border, and seek first contact with the Border Patrol. That's why when you see the scenes from the border, very few of these people are actually trying to evade and like sneak into the country. They're trying to run up to the first Border Patrol person they can find and say, hey, I'm here for amnesty. They all know exactly what to say. The Democrats designed it that way. We can immediately tell whoever is in the White House, and I pray it's President Trump because we won't need to remind him. We're going to support him. I think it's going to be Donald Trump, but we need to support him and say, hey, get the military down to the border, finish the wall, because the wall will stop the fentanyl from coming through. When I went down to the San Diego border, because when I talked to law enforcement here in the district, I've done ride-alongs pretty much in all of our county, and they all said, hey, we've got a fentanyl problem. It's killing our citizens. It's coming up the I-5 corridor from the San Diego crossing. When I went down there, I saw, hey, there's the illegal immigrants that are coming across, but then at night, there's also, well, the Border Patrol is distracted with those that are claiming amnesty, there's people bringing the fentanyl through the gaps in the border. Finish the wall, get the military down there, mass deportations, cut off any ability that people have to make money here legally. A lot of them will self-deport. Dictate that our federal government stops chasing down grandmothers that were somewhere near the Capitol on January 6th and start going after the terrorists that went out.
Send me next questions for you. You have 2 minutes. How do we turn around our economy in Washington State, and where do you make cuts in the current budget?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick on that one too. We start on day one with a third-party audit of all state programs and all state offices. We know where the money's going, so we find out. Day one. We have the highest liquor tax in the nation. We've had a gas tax for decades. Have you seen the roads lately, right? We have a marijuana tax. We have a gambling tax. We need to know where the money's going. So my job, I'm a behavioral scientist, but I don't do clinical. I do organizational psychology. So my occupation is a business consultant. Corporations hire me to come in, whether it's aerospace, whether it's universities or hospitals, urban and rural. I come in and I do things like Lean or Six Sigma methodology. I find where the waste is and I remove the waste, or I measure performance. I bring strategy. I do strategic analysis. So I have the knowledge, skills, and abilities. So the assessment that we're going to do is finding where the money is. It's finding out how these programs are functioning. We pay people billions of dollars to stay poor for generations, instead of bringing trades and bringing certifications to raise them up out of poverty and despair and break that generational poverty and create jobs. So that's what we need to do, is find out how we're performing. Billions of dollars. Jay Inslee doubled the budget in 10 years to $71.5 billion. We have a homelessness program. Homelessness, they said, is up 10%. I said 23% or 25%. It's 23% year over year. We're paying billions of dollars for what when it continues to go this? We are funding habitual addiction and mental illness. That is the root cause of homelessness in Washington State, not housing. And when we're talking about housing, We're talking about these energy codes that they've raised so high, they doubled the cost of building a house or building an apartment unit, and that's why housing is unaffordable. And so there's so many things we need to do, but it has to start with understanding how our government is performing and functioning and bringing strategic accountability and transparency. That is what I do for a living, and that is what I will do as your governor when I go to work to serve you as the customer. Thank you.
The last question is for each of you. Each of you, first of all, we all appreciate it. Have these men done a good job? Are they doing a good job? Men that would stand up and accurately represent our majority voice, zero interest in personal power for themselves, but understanding servant leadership, have their heart completely positioned in a place of serving. It's beautiful. So this question is for each of you. It's the same. 1 minute to be able to remind everyone what you would do to earn their vote, and to be able to also give somebody some encouragement as to what they can do as a point of action to go out and make a difference. And please include your thoughts on legal ballot harvesting. Please share your thoughts about that.
Well, I can't give an opinion on legal ballot harvesting because it's not, I don't know if it's going to come before the court or not. But so I operate by 2 rules. Love the freedom of others as much or more as you love your own is rule 1. Rule 2, it's more important to do right than it is to be right.
Right. Yeah.
And that drives everything that I do, regardless of the context that I'm in, whether it's my personal life, like life on the bench, those type of things. I wish I could say that there needs to be some call to action for the judiciary. I think what needs to happen is we need to change the way that we elect judges, because it's right now, the way it is, the people in power, it's in their interest to keep it so you don't understand. And we gotta change that. But that is probably the call to action. When it comes to my role, again, I go back to that responsibility, is to when something comes before the court, what I guarantee I'm gonna do is follow my oath, and it's gonna make sense. Common sense shouldn't be uncommon.
Three years ago, my life changed. I was working out in my buddy's garage, complaining about attorneys doing nothing to stand for our rights. And then I had the thought in my mind, you're an attorney, what are you doing? That's the question I want to flip on each one of you, except not that you're an attorney part. What are you doing? You're here tonight. Great. It's been a great atmosphere. I appreciate it. But what are you doing to improve your community? What are you doing to improve your state? You want me to talk about ballot harvesting? You own a business, you go to church, you go to a gun range, you go to anywhere that's safe and secure. Do you talk to people in the stores? I got my buddy up in Spokane who's like, man, all I do is, beat people up, not physically, but, with words, telling them about how important this election is. All I do is talk. Are you doing that? If you're not, we need you. We need you. We'll put our necks on the line. We need you to get our 6. Go do something.
So I think it's encouraging how under fire we are, because if the situation was hopeless, their propaganda and their hate would be completely unnecessary. We are winning. This is not a blue district. This is not a blue state. We're the majority of the state. We're the majority of this country. We've just got to get the word out. So go have those hard conversations. We have a superpower. We can talk about issues the other side can't. That's why all they do is name call and spread propaganda. Get out there, talk about securing the border, talk about balancing the budget, talk about protecting our kids. Those are common sense issues we win on. For ballot harvesting, join our ballot harvesting team. Talk to my campaign manager, Flo's right back there. Go to joekemforcongress.com. Get with I saw like half this audience right here is PCOs. Go volunteer with a PCO. If you're a PCO in this district, I want to come knock doors with you. So get with Flo and we'll get out there. We can win. We just got to drive out that turnout. Thank you guys.
Well, on April 20th, we made history in Spokane, Washington, when we won 72% supermajority and was endorsed by the Washington State Republican Party. Thank you. We get that. And they said that nobody from nowhere with no money cannot win, has no choice, no chance, no hope of ever winning anything. And in King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County, Clark County, Spokane County, the largest counties in the state, we were rolling and we were rolling strong. And why? Because we were here, we were there, we were there. We were out engaging with the citizens in the inner city of Seattle. Yesterday I was in King County in Jimi Hendrix Park, thousands of people with permanent tans, like me, and some of you in the audience with a good tan. And they were coming up to me and they were saying, brother, thanks for coming back. Because I was there last year and I was there throughout the year, and they remembered. And they were saying, oh, they were talking about President Trump, hear that. And they were talking about common sense. They were talking about common sense. My friends, I'm gonna go over for a second. Bear with me, please. Give me grace on this one. But my friends, you cannot give up hope, because common sense goes a long way. Protecting the innocence of our children, bringing public safety to those communities that are at risk, breaking that generational poverty that has been going on, people being subjugated and exploited. We made history. We endorsed the first black candidate for governor of any party in Washington State, not because of equity, not because of public appeal, because of meritocracy, because we earned it. That is America. Never give up.